Hi everyone, welcome to the Movieception Show. My name is Ferrera, and today I want to talk about Barbie. And I'm super excited to be talking about this comedy because if you've been following me for quite some time, you would know that I've covered a couple of Barbie trailer reactions, and each and every time we got the new trailers, I became far more excited to go and check out this movie. And after waiting for some time, of course, we finally got the movie this past weekend, of course, during Barbenheimer weekend, and how there's that whole, battle between Barbie and Oppenheimer, which honestly is just more of the fact that both the movies were benefiting from each other's, success and all that sort of stuff. But with that being the case, right, I think that this was probably quite the movie experience to remember. So yeah, I want to go start off with just sharing my side of my story of how my experience was like checking out Barbie from the moment I entered my theater to, of course, the end of the movie. Now, as I said before, I was super hyped to go check out this movie. I mean, again, it seemed really humorous. The concept seemed very interesting. The cast was pretty packed. You had Greta Gerwig as a director. I mean, this seemed like one of the most perfect comedies to go and check out. So, of course, I was already hyped to go check out this movie. And on top of the fact that, there was that whole Barbenheimer, phenomenon going on, I actually had, really kind of dived deep into that whole, mindset of Barbenheimer that I've actually bought a couple of shirts to commemorate the whole weekend just to, fit in with the whole theme that was going on. So the moment I got to my theater, right, I mean, I already knew that this was going to be a really big movie without a doubt. I mean, it was definitely one that was very unpredictable in terms of its success, but nonetheless, one that I knew for a fact a lot of people were going to check out. So, of course, I was wearing my Barbenheimer shirt that was in black, and the moment I entered my theater is when I had a whiff of shock come through my flames and just getting the goosebumps, just seeing what was, happening around me, because the environment of my theater was absolutely unexpected. I did not expect so much pink at my theater. Pink was splattered everywhere. People around me were just wearing pink from top to bottom, from head to toe. There were literally pink popcorn being served, which unfortunately by the time I got to the actual counter, they were all sold out. But oh my God, I did not anticipate such a reception coming out of people around me from my, patrons. Because, I mean, usually speaking, when it comes to these movies, I don't really see a lot of people putting in so much effort to really fit with the theme of what the movie's about or anything like that, of that sort. People are just wearing normal clothes, wearing casual things, and that's about it. But everyone went all out at my theater. People were wearing pink after pink. People were in cowboy outfits. There were even a couple of ladies who managed to somehow obtain kind of a replica of the checkerboard sort of dress that Margot Robbie wears in the beginning of the movie. They somehow able to obtain that and wore that. It was absolutely incredible seeing how people really went all out at my theater. And let alone, it's not just the Barbies. I actually had one Ken in my theater, which honestly, I don't even know what to say, because that was so awesome to see. The Ken that I saw was the Ryan Gosling Ken, who, was, if you remember from the trailers, you see, Ryan Gosling's Ken rollerblading through Venice Beach with Margot Robbie's Barbie, and they're wearing this neon sort of outfit. That's the one. That's the outfit that I saw of my Ken at my theater. So, I mean, knowing the fact that I was already excited to go see this movie, seeing the environment that I was in, knowing that, everyone went all out with the whole Barbie theme, that really raised the bar with the whole expectations for this movie. Honestly, I was even more pumped just checking out this movie, knowing that everyone else around me was this excited to go check out Barbie. Now, of course, again, I was wearing a black, t-shirt, a Barbenheimer t-shirt. And so I didn't go full on with the whole pink thing because I didn't even know that this was going to be a thing. I had no idea this was a whole trend that was going on. But I will say for one thing, the actual print that I had was very much hot pink. It was literally abstract, hot pink sort of design of Barbenheimer, and it was a stencil print. So I at least had some print on me. So at least I somehow got into parts of the theme at some point. But But yeah, that was my theater experience right there. Now, of course, I want to talk straight about the movie, how I feel about it, because I have a lot of things to say. So let me just say this, right? I have to applaud Greta Gerwig with how she really approached this whole movie, because the whole creativity behind it, like, you have to think about this movie and strategize it from the beginning to the end. And at least in terms of the beginning, the first act, it starts off very, very strong. The hook is there right away, hits you. Like, it literally hits you right away the moment they start the movie. It allows us to understand this whole world, Barbie as a toy, the world building of Barbie. Like, I mean, the moment we start getting into Barbie land and seeing the set pieces and aesthetic and the backdrop, I mean, it absolutely amazes you the incredible efforts that, the people, the creative minds have went through, whether it be the stunt designers or the production designers. I mean, just the world of Barbie is absolutely spectacular. Like, I mean, you see a lot of pink, of course, but I think what really kind of grabs your attention is the fact that there's just so much plastic, yet it is so fitting with the whole thing of Barbie, because that is who Barbie is, right? Her world is a plastic world. So I have to applaud that whole, introduction right there. Like, right away, you felt like you were jumping into Barbie's world, and it was really spot on with how they were able to capture the viewpoint of Barbie in a way that, even though it is live action, even though you're seeing a humanized, or at least a human form of Barbie, the whole environment around it is still very Barbie-like plastic environment. Of course, like, I mean, it's one thing to be talking about the whole setting, the whole set piece of the movie. Then there's the other piece where we have to really address stereotypical Barbie played by Margot Robbie. And oh my god, I mean, I don't know how to say this, but like, I think we can all agree, I think we're all pretty much unanimous about this, that Margot Robbie is the perfect embodiment of Barbie. Like, I don't think there's anyone else I would have imagined playing Barbie the way that Margot Robbie was able to play her. For one thing, of course, she literally has the physical, features right pat down. Like, I mean, she literally looks like Barbie if you were to just look at her. So, I mean, that already, sets up a high bar with Margot Robbie's casting as Barbie. But the other big question would be is how she would approach Barbie. And honestly, considering that she is playing stereotypical Barbie, showing us her day-to-day lifestyle, how she's living this plastic world where she's, going through the typical norms of what her day is like. I mean, she starts off things in a very high note, and I have to applaud Margot Robbie for her ability to really just embody Barbie, because not only is the world itself very a plastic world, but you can also see moments in the movie where Margot Robbie is literally embodying like Barbie as if she was an actual toy herself. Like, there are a million moments in this movie where you see her just like literally feeling how it's like to be a Barbie toy, whether it be kind of the movements or the attitude or the way that they are really kind of trying to touch things that are tangible. Like, it was just, I mean, it really blew my mind how they went all out with the whole Barbie aesthetic. So I have to give props to Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie for getting those right down to the T. Those were some of the best things I saw from this movie, just how they over exaggerated all the Barbie aspects, but even to the point where it was very fitting with how, we imagine Barbie is, because this is how she is as a toy. She is supposed to be a toy, and they made sure that they try to portray her, at least in the beginning of the movie, as a toy. Of course, that's not just the whole gist of the whole movie, right? It's not just following Barbie as a plastic doll, right? Like, we already saw from the trailers how they were definitely going to delve into the whole existential crisis, that whole, sort of gist of the story. So, of course, when we start to really dive into those parts of the movie, like, I mean, for one thing, like, it definitely keeps up with the humor. There's a lot of meta, moments in this movie that absolutely has you cracking. Like, at least for me, like, I'm not the biggest comedy person. Like, comedies can be hit or miss for me. It depends on how they really kind of execute the humor. And this is definitely one of the cases where I absolutely had a blast in terms of the humor in this movie. Like, some of the jokes were super meta. Like, I mean, I'll try to reference a couple of them here and there when I, get more and more into my review. But there were definitely moments in the movie that got super meta that I was literally just bawling out of my seat. Like, I was just jumping with laughter. Just, again, how absolutely well thought out and sharply thought out, jokes were in this movie. Just the quips were just enough to have me really enjoying this movie. But of course, like, even with the humorous aspect, right? I think one of the things that I have to applaud is that with the humorous aspect, it was still well balanced out with the fact that this movie still delves into some very important issues, which is, of course, going into themes like feminism, the patriarchy, toxic masculinity, double standards, free will. That actually becomes the gist of the remaining parts of Barbie's arc moving forward, because of course the whole point of this movie is her journey to self-discovery, right? The moment that she realizes that something is wrong with her, knowing that she's dealing with some sort of existential crisis, and now she has to go into the real world and figure out what's going on and what she can do to somehow resolve that, right? She's going into her whole journey of self-discovery. And I think as a result of that, we start to really dig into much more deeper issues, like things like, feminism, patriarchy, all that sort of stuff, right? And this is where it becomes a question of how can Greta Gerwig somehow balance out some of the more, hot topics while doing this in a way that still maintains the movie's comedic atmosphere, and it still works out very well. Like, this is where I have to again applaud Greta Gerwig's vision in terms of how she was able to approach the story, making sure that she's able to balance out the dramatic stuff with the comedy and doing so in a way that doesn't ever feel too preachy. And this is where it's like, I again, it's absolutely well thought out. Like, the more I start to get more and more into Barbie's arc, knowing that she's going through these obstacles, going all these trials and tribulations, knowing that she has a lot of things to kind of process, and for her to realize what her true purpose is, the more I start to, appreciate the whole message behind this movie, because it really delves into the whole idea of Barbie as a symbol, thinking about what she is supposed to portray as kind of the norm of like womanhood and girlhood, and yet we see the consequences of that and how she as a Barbie toy, for the longest time being, unaware of what, how she as a statue has been like in the real world. Now she's taking things into her own hands and trying to make decisions of her own. I mean, these are messages that I think are very well depicted in this movie, while still making sure that it still, keeps up with this momentum, keeping up with this humor, while also trying to balance out the whole, serious topics about, feminism and the social commentary behind this movie. So this is where we start to really kind of dive into the supporting characters, how they start to come into the picture, of course, and we start to learn about their connection with Barbie. So this is, characters played by Margot Ferrera, and I can't remember the young girl's name, but they play, the two humans in this movie, and we start to see how they have a bigger purpose and why they're connected to Barbie, of course. And again, this is where we start to really dive deep into the whole social commentary aspect of this movie. Again, going to the feminism, going into the patriarchy, trying to discuss a lot of the big issues regarding, especially in one case where we do have this really great monologue. It's so well written. I mean, I cannot even imagine how Greta Gerwig was able to kind of compile the right words for this, but there's a monologue that is said by Margot Ferrera's character. I believe her character's name was maybe Grace. I want to say it's Grace. I don't know. I might be getting confused with Mission Impossible, but Margot Ferrera's character, who gives off this really, inspiring monologue about what it feels like to be a woman, and that really sets the course. Like, I think for that whole monologue, it becomes a catalyst for the rest of the movie, because then we start to see their journeys moving forward, how they're trying to, break down this whole, wall between what it's like to be a female, what it's like to be a male, trying to understand the whole dominance of society, who gets control, who doesn't, who has dominance. This is something that really starts to really dive down as you get more and more into the movie as a result of this monologue. And again, I think this is where I have to once again applaud the writing of the story that's from, Gerwig, as well as her partner, Noah Baumbach, for really just executing a lot of the dialogue, the storytelling, the arc that we have with Barbie, and just about every character around them. Like, they all have some sort of purpose, some sort of play into the story. And I think as a result of that, it makes the whole adventure feel far more fun, but also very meaningful as you get deeper and deeper and closer to the end of the movie. Having said all the, main parts about the movie, again, I feel like Greta Gerwig does a great job with the direction, the whole vision of her trying to execute the story, the way that she balances out the social commentary and the meta humor. I mean, Margot Robbie's performance, I mean, just wow, I love her playful, whimsical feel to it. And of course, I'm gonna talk about Ryan Gosling in a second. I do want to mention that this is not the most perfect comedy, of course. I think there are a couple of flaws that I was able to notice here and there. I think the first one I have to mention, of course, is the pacing. Like, I feel like the pacing wasn't all that far off. I think for the most part, this movie does a really great job of moving forward bit by bit, and the momentum was pretty clear from the beginning to the end, and it's been consistent for the most part. There are definitely moments, again, because of the fact that, you know, there were a couple of not the journeys, but a couple obstacles that Barbie had to undergo, and, you know, there were some resolutions here and there, and, you know, all these subplots that were involved. There were moments where you can definitely get the sense of the, you know, the story slowing down a little bit here and there, which, I mean, it wasn't too much of a bad thing. I mean, again, it wasn't something that had such a huge impact on the movie. I think, again, once, you know, once the movie kind of, you know, flow through some of the dialogue and the plot pieces, that, you know, it starts to kind of raise on its momentum a little bit. Like, it started to get better and better. But that was something that I noticed. Like, a lot of the moments felt a little slow. Another thing I also want to mention, that there was one character. Like, here's the thing. Like, with the supporting cast, like, I absolutely love a lot of the supporting cast. I love Weird Barbie, played by Kate McKinnon. I think she was quite a very strange Barbie, but she was definitely kind of one of the big rock stars in this film. And again, I feel like this is the perfect casting with McKinnon playing Weird Barbie. I think, again, she was definitely one of the biggest stars in the movie. I absolutely love that Barbie. Definitely one of the highlight, or at least one of the star Barbies in this movie. So that's one thing I want to mention. I absolutely loved Alan. Like, I know Alan got a lot of flake in this movie because, like, I mean, they were kind of playing on the fact that he's kind of the outcast because he's the only Alan in the Barbie world, or Barbie land, whereas everyone else is either a Barbie or either a Ken. And then there's just Alan, played by Michael Cera. And I mean, yeah, he doesn't have a lot of or it doesn't have too much of a screen time in this movie, but even with that being the case, I absolutely liked Alan. I want to say justice for Alan. Like, he was definitely one of the more intriguing characters out there, because you really sympathize him. You understand what it feels like to kind of feel like this outcast in a way. Like, he was definitely one character who I really appreciate in this movie. And yeah, that was just one other character I wanted to pinpoint. And I'll talk about Ryan Gosling in a second. I promise I will get to Ryan Gosling. But there is one character that I felt like kind of felt a little underwhelming, and that is America Ferrera's character's daughter, who I cannot seem to remember. I think her name might have been Sasha, maybe? I'm going to say it may have been Sasha, but I can't remember. But the daughter, right? The daughter in the movie, who we meet somewhere around, like, the end of the first act, the beginning of the second act. Yeah, I mean, I feel like she was probably one of the more inconsistent characters in this movie, just because, like, she starts as someone who is a teen, like, you know, someone who is, you know, very antsy, because she does feel like she's very cranky about life. She doesn't have a lot of liveliness to her. She kind of feels like she's dead inside, because, like, she is just such, like, the punk type of person, and that was just the vibe I was getting out of her, especially in one moment where we see that scene between her and Barbie and how she's, like, absolutely mean to her. She was definitely one where it's like, okay, I understand how she is a character in the beginning of the movie, but her whole, like, you know, I would say her whole development moving forward from that scene kind of felt a little inconsistent. Like, it just didn't feel like it was a very organic way of foretelling her story, or at least trying to involve her in the story. So that was just one thing I'm also gonna, like, nitpick about, just because I felt like she was definitely one character I would have expected more from, especially if she was so involved with the whole Barbie story. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. But even with that being the case, I think the rest of the movie is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I want to talk about, for one thing, of course, like, Ryan Gosling, because this is definitely the one that has been quite a heated debate about, you know, whether or not Ryan Gosling's casting is even fitting for a movie like Barbie. Like, people were already criticizing his whole casting, because some people were arguing that he was too old, or that it doesn't have the whole right, you know, I guess, attitude to really portray a character like, you know, Ken, because, you know, typically speaking, when we see, you know, any sort of Ryan Gosling movie, he is definitely playing somebody who is far more dramatic, far more brooding, who definitely has a darkness to them in some form or some way. So I get that argument, but of course, I was definitely one of the big defenders of Ryan Gosling's casting. Like, I've been saying this every time we were doing some of the trailer reviews that, like, I'm telling you that, Ryan Gosling's gonna be the one that's going to stand out. Like, he is going to be one of the big rock stars in this movie. Just wait and see. And wait and see indeed, because he definitely was one of the highlights of this movie, especially in the final act. And let me just say, like, as I was saying before, like, just watch The Nice Guy. This guy has the ability to really knows how to time his comedy. Like, it might not be in the, typical sense of how people would, manifest their whole humorous aspect or their funny bone, but with the way that Gosling really portrays his character, at least in Barbie, it's just absolutely perfect. You can get the sense of insecurity behind Ken, knowing that he can't seem to really win over the heart of Barbie, trying to, somehow get her to love him or be reciprocal in that matter. And this is something that we do see hinted from here and there from the first and second act, but it's really the third act where we really start to see Ken shine, or in that case, Ryan Gosling shine as Ken, where we start to see kind of how he starts to have his own, first experience of what it's like to be a, in a patriarch world, the toxic masculinity, what it's like to be a male dominant, person, all that sort of stuff. And once they start really diving into that, you get the sense of, Ryan Gosling's comedy really kind of playing out in like more ways than ever. Like, you can see how he's exaggerating the extent of his character's psyche, what he is feeling, the insecurity behind it, and how that has an effect on him by the time we get to end the movie. Like, he really has a down and pat. Like, I mean, he does not show it like maybe facially, but the way he acts it out, like, it's just absolutely phenomenal. I feel like he was definitely one of the highlights of this movie. Just his performance was just the right amount of balance of drama and comedy, having the right amount of exaggeration and campiness. His whole, like, cultural shock when he realizes this world that is the real world and how the world actually operates there versus how he has been living through his life in Barbie land. Like, I mean, that was definitely one of the aspects I really enjoyed, especially when we got to the final act and seeing how, Gosling played out Ken and trying to deal with all of those moments. Like, I mean, I absolutely loved him. I feel like without a doubt, I feel like at this point, he is definitely going to have, or at least, he will definitely have, I feel like, at least for him, he definitely has a high chance of being a best supporting actor nod or getting one, because I think without a doubt, like, I think with his whole performance, it was definitely just the right balance of drama and comedy. And this was the case here. Like, I feel like I absolutely had a blast watching him. I had a lot of laughs watching performance, especially the one case where we get the Just Ken song. Like, I'm gonna say this, right? I mean, this is a film that is really heavy with the whole, soundtrack. I think the movie itself has a soundtrack, like a separate soundtrack that plays somewhere, like at least some of the songs here and there without the movie. Like, there's one with Dua Lipa. There's of course one from Nicki Minaj, and I think even Billie Eilish has one that plays at the end of the movie. But the one song that's been really stuck in my head is Just Ken. I mean, oh my god, that song is so catchy. And of course, it's sang by Ryan Gosling, of course. I feel like that's definitely going to be the one that I think, in terms of doing, the Oscar campaign, that should be the one that is probably going to be, spotlighted as, like, contender for Best Original Song. So we'll see where all that goes. But, like, again, the whole Just Ken, segment that we see in that film, where Ryan Gosling's Ken is going up against Simu Liu's Ken. I mean, it was just absolutely, it was berserk and wonky and very campy. It was such an enjoyment. It was such a huge enjoyment just watching how they were able to play out with the Kens there. So again, a lot of great things I had with this film. I think there's a lot of great moments, a lot of great, scenes and sequences where we start to see both Barbie and Ken shine. I think the one thing I really want to mention about, and again, compliment Greta Gerwig with this in terms of storytelling, is that, again, with this whole movie, right, we know for a fact that this movie is going to be very focused on the whole Barbie perspective, right, or the female perspective, what it feels like to be a woman in society, and trying to depict things like feminism and double standards and free will. But this movie also balances out the fact that we also see Ken's story also being depicted onto the big screen, which is far more subtle than a lot of people would think, because, again, like, you have to really understand what the message is about. But this is where I really was applauding this, because I start to see that it's not just a Barbie movie, but in an extension, you can also see how this movie is also a Ken movie, because again, it's all about the final act. I feel like the final act I have to really applaud it because, again, we start to really see the shift and how the story starts to be kind of a mutuality between Barbie and Ken, how they're trying to figure out their whole, journey, their whole self-discovery. So it's not just Barbie undergoing this self-discovery, but also Ken going through his whole self-discovery and how he tries to figure out what is best for him. And this is where I have to applaud the conclusion for this film, because it's not any sort of cliche. Like, it's not a cliche ending where you anticipate somehow that it's going to end up in a way that Barbie is going to end up with Ken or something like that. No, like, this is not a romantic comedy. Of course, this is just a comedy, but in a way that exaggerated on, certain aspects, especially with the whole world building. And in this case, right, it doesn't take that easy approach. It definitely is a ending that is unexpected, one that that really kind of sways a lot of our expectations, yet it's very satisfying, very fulfilling, because it doesn't go into that cliche route. It's definitely something that really hones in on the big themes of this movie. Again, things like free will, trying to balance out one's self-discovery. And this was a big case here where it's like it's all about choice, and this is something that really hones out in a big way in the end of the movie. And again, at least with this film, again, knowing that fact that this is a movie that is showing the symbol of Barbie, it also, an extension, is showing the symbol of Ken. Again, I feel like that final act is where we start to really see a lot of the complexities of the storytelling, the elements behind it, the messages. And I think that that's something that I have to applaud, how Greta Gerwig was able to really think things through with the whole screenplay, the whole structure of the movie, doing so in a way that it's not just very Barbie heavy, but also giving Ken his own voice as well. So again, I feel like this is a film that absolutely had such a blast watching, because for one thing, the performances are top notch from Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. As I said before, I think Ryan Gosling is probably going to get a Best Supporting Actor nod, and I think I hope at some point we're probably going to see Margot Robbie even becoming a tender for Best Actress for the Oscars. We'll see how that goes, because typically speaking, comedies don't have a big chance going into the Oscar season, but I hope that this could be the exception for this. But the performances are great. The whole world building is absolutely spectacular. I love the set pieces. I love how it's very exaggerated, very campy, and it fits very well and translates into the whole humor for the film. And yet, in doing so, it's really it balances out the whole social commentary of this movie. Greta Gerwig's direction is absolutely top notch. Is a masterclass. Creativity behind this film. Like considering the fact that I was super excited to see this movie, like the whole excitement pays off by the time I get to the end of this film. Like, I think that I absolutely had a blast watching Barbie. I had a lot of fun watching Barbie. The people around me were having a lot of fun watching Barbie. I actually took my buddy Marilyn and one other friend of mine to go check out this movie, and we all had a blast. We all had a lot of fun. We loved the whole message behind the film, as well as what it's trying to kind of do in terms of, trying to discuss the whole symbol of Barbie and her legacy as a result of, her being a popular toy for so many decades, and even becoming quite a generational toy from beginning to the end. So again, I feel like this is a film that really just, it definitely met my expectations. Again, I feel like this was almost a near perfect film, with the exception of a couple of things that I've noted, like the flaws, like some of the character inconsistencies, as well as the pacing here and there, and some of the moments feeling a bit slow. But even that being the case, I think that this is a very smart, really well thought out film. Definitely very funny. Lots of great moments. Again, I would love to see the actual production design for this film. I feel like production design is going to be a big one for this film going to the Oscars. But absolutely, I feel like this is a film that really started off in a bang, and starting off the Barbenheimer week for me. And wow, I mean, it's just spectacular to see all these movies coming out all at once. But I think Barbie definitely is one that I think is one of the best comedies I've seen as of this year so far. Is it one of my favorite films? I have yet to really determine that. I feel like I would like to watch this movie one more time. I definitely want to see it again, because again, I had so much fun watching it. I had a lot of enjoyment with seeing this film. And maybe hopefully by the time I get to end the movie, we'll see where this film ranks in terms of my favorite films. But definitely one of the ones I thoroughly enjoyed. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Barbie. I think I've probably pinpointed everything I need to say about it. Again, I'm just happy that by the end of the day, Barbie ended up being what it was supposed to be, that it was the enjoying film that I had hoped it to be. And yeah, like I think that's all that matters, right? So, but yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. Like, if you have seen Barbie, did you like it? Did you not like it? I know the whole response, I mean, for the most part, the reception has been pretty positive, although I've been hearing I've been reading a couple of reviews from certain people, and I mean, definitely question about those. But let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think about this film overall? Like, did you like it? Did you not like it? Why do you like it, or why do you not like it? What are some things that you probably think could have improved, or you think were some of the best moments in the movie? What do you think about the performances by the cast? What do you think about Ryan Gosling's performance in this movie? Because that's definitely been one of the biggest topics going into the film, like one of the more heated debates about it. What do you think about Greta Gerwig's direction, her visionary, as well as the writing of the movie? What do you think about the way that they really approached the set pieces for this film? Do you think this is a movie that's going to be one of the big contenders going to Oscar season? If you've done Barbenheimer, do you think this was better than Oppenheimer, or vice versa? And considering that there has been, rumors about a potential sequel, if that's the case, what do you think at least what do you think to anticipate going into a possible sequel in terms of the story? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.